Good morning, everyone. My name is Marley Higa, and I've been at Grace for 5 years. Yeah. In my first year here, I joined the Altar Guild. And since then, I've been serving as one of the chalice bearers. I'm also a lay Eucharistic visitor, which means I bring communion to people who are homebound. And I'm on the pastoral care team, which means if someone wants a visit, I can come and sit with them and talk. And it also means that during the service, if you want a personal prayer lifted up, we can pray together. Or during the week, if you have a prayer request, I can pray for you during the week. And I'm also on the vestry. One of the things I'm most grateful for about Grace is that it's given me ways to pursue things that are important to me, like spiritual care and spiritual formation. It's also provided me with a community of mentors and friends, and also future friends, as I get to know more of you over time and as new people come to Grace. So I just wanted to share with you a little from my experience in two of the capacities that I serve in, vestry and chalice bearing. So thank you in advance for your patience with my faltering words. One of the most striking things to me about serving on the vestry has been listening to Kathy Shanks, our treasurer, go line by line over the treasurer's report, which is the first half hour of the meeting. Every budget line, every expenditure, every check that goes out, she explains why a certain line seems over budget but actually doesn't reflect incoming, pending income, and she gives historical context for things that we're contracting. Just a lot of detail. And what I've been so struck by is not just the transparency and the attention to detail, but the warmth and care of her voice. In her voice, you hear it. And there's a joy in it too, which, I'm not a numbers person, so I don't expect to hear that kind of attention and care and joy. And I'm listening to her, and I feel the aliveness in those figures that she's calling out. And it's because of the way that those figures are attended to and cared for by Kathy and by the vestry, whose decisions and discussions before that resulted in those figures. And from that, I realized that money is a form of energy, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. But when that energy is given and received and handled in the right way, it becomes like a form of love. And I have to say, there isn't a dollar that gets spent without being discussed and weighed against other needs and contextualized before it's approved. And honestly, I have thought many times when I'm sitting there, if you were a dollar bill with like a self-esteem problem, and you're thinking, I can't do what I used to do, I'm not worth that much, what am I doing with my life? No one would even know if I left. Someone should place you on that vestry table, because you would start to feel so good about yourself. You'd be like, these people, they're going to take care of me. I can make a beautiful window. I can tune the organ. I can fix a junky heating system. I can do anything. And you would be right, because love makes things possible. And this love flows through what we do as a church. And it nourishes and it delivers. It's like the blood in the body. I just wanted to reiterate something that Linda said last week, and because I think it's important, because I've wondered about it in the past, and she said that a pledge is confidential. And that is absolutely true. No one on Vestry is privy to anything having to do with pledges. And it's because it's none of our business. It's none of our business because a pledge is sacred. It's a sacred decision, and it's a sacred action. I asked Bill Taylor if I could speak today. He's one of our wardens. And I asked, not because I love public speaking, I think you can tell I'm not a, comfortable public speaker. But I wanted to speak to you because I feel that we all speak the same language. And what I mean by that is I think everything in life takes place on a literal level and a spiritual level. But we're usually just thinking about the literal practical level because we're busy. There are things we have to get done. But I think those of us who come to church come because we're seeking something that we know can be experienced in a church service. And we listen for it in the music and in the readings, and we look for it in everything we see around us. And we speak it in communal prayer, and we receive it in the Eucharist. I think we come here in order to pay attention to the spiritual dimension of life. And it's because we're paying attention that we experience the sacred. And experiencing the sacred recenters us, and it reorients us toward God. And that is nourishing in a way that can hardly be expressed. When Jesus, at the end of his earthly life, said to Peter, "Feed my sheep, feed my lambs," I think that is what he meant. Help my people to know the sacred in every action and in every moment. I'll just share something now from my experience in doing chalice. A few years ago, we were blessed to have not only Father Matt, but Reverend Allison with us. You remember her. And also Molly O'Neill Frank, who was a graduating seminarian. Many of you were here at that time. And as you know, the three of them would take turns doing the sermon and being the celebrant. And it was a really powerful experience being here. And it wasn't just their sermons, it was their presence, and their synergy together. And I remember, sitting in the pews many times during Holy Communion and looking at the three of them behind the altar. And I was like, they're like all stars, And I would feel so moved because here are these three people who had come from such different backgrounds. Father Matt had been a carpenter, a builder. And Reverend Allison had been a lawyer. And Molly had been a theater producer for many years. And but all three of them had been open to God and then opened by God. And now here they were, all three of them at Grace. And so, I'd be in the pews, and there are many times, there's 2 times during communion where they cross themselves. And I would see the three of them do that in synchrony. And something took place in me when that happened. Something shifted. It was a recognition of the action of God. That's how it felt. It was a recognition of holiness. And then they left. Reverend Allison retired, and Molly got traded to another team. But thank God, we still have our Patrick Mahomes over here. But I really grieve their departure, and then their absence. And then after they left, Ben was doing everything. He had like all the roles. And so Father Matt asked me to help with chalice, and that was how I got started doing chalice bearing. So now I sit up here sometimes. And when I sit up here, what I see is not the altar anymore. What I see is you. And week after week, I'll see you sitting here together and praying and listening to the sermon and singing. And we share communion. And that was how I realized that despite departures, nothing has been lost here, because you are the holy men and women. And, you may not feel holy all the time, but, I don't think Eleanor Roosevelt felt like a holy person. She had many struggles and sorrows in her life, and with all the difficult feelings that come with that. And, Jesus' disciples, I don't think they thought of themselves as holy. And in fact, sometimes I think the whole reason that there are stories of the disciples in the Bible is to acknowledge our human tendency to doubt and deny and fear and hesitate. But it's over time, by degrees, and through many actions and decisions and commitments, and by the grace of God, that they became and we become who we really are, which is the body of Christ. Something Mother Teresa said about the work of her order, which is the Missionaries of Charity, she would say, "We don't do great things. We do small things with great love." A pledge to the church is sacred. It's a small thing done with great love. It's a flow of energy. It's a reorientation toward deeper relationship. And I think it's in relationship that we experience change and healing and joy and new life. So thank you.